Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Leathercraft Community Podcast Show. On today's episode, I'm sitting with a knife maker whose knives are incredibly sharp and they are known for their sharpness and extreme high quality. It is the one and only Scott Teaschner. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So you've been doing leather work for 20 years, and I want to know right away, where are you located and where's your shop located, and how did you get started in leathercraft?
So I've been in Cody, Wyoming for 17 years. My shop is just right on my property. And I got started, I'm from the Midwest originally. I was living in Wisconsin, and I was big into horses. I was shoeing horses. I was coming out here, do elk hunting. And I had met a bunch of people from Sheridan and just kind of got introduced to pretty good high quality cowboy gear. Don Butler, Kings, knew all the greats from there. And just in the back of my mind, I just knew that like at some point I was going to try to make a saddle or going to make a saddle and wanted to make gear. And so I just got to a point where I was 33 years old and I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I have to do it now. And so I sold my place back in Wisconsin and I moved to Montana, and I took a course on building a saddle just to see if I'd like it. And that's how it started.
Do you still have that saddle today?
I sold it.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I sold it.
Yeah. So how many saddles did you make?
Oh, man, I never really kept track. But, I was building saddles in the winter. I was working on a guest ranch. And so for 3 years, I was building saddles in the winter time. And then I wanted to go work in a shop professionally. And so a friend of mine was hunting down here around Cody. And I had always heard about Keith Seidel's reputation. And so I swung into his shop and got hired to start out basically like sweeping floors, and doing edges and stuff. And I worked off and on for him for a total of 4 years. Never in his shop, you're not really, I mean, I know he's had some saddle makers that just made saddles, but like he delegates pieces of the work to everybody. But at the time I was working there, he had a tremendous belt business, and we were making really high-end belts. And so, you had guys that were cutting parts out, constructing the belt, toolers, and so it was really actually it was a tough atmosphere to work in. It was, the standard of quality was, the highest level. I mean, we're back 17 years ago or whatever, we're selling belts for $1,200, they had to be perfect. So, but I learned a lot in construction, even though I wasn't really working, building a saddle there start to finish, so it just it exposed me to, a lot of high quality work and techniques of getting there.
Yeah. And then now to transition into knife making, let's talk about how you got affiliated and how you got your knowledge with knife making.
Sure. Yeah. So when I started out, it was so hard to get a good knife. At that point, there wasn't really anybody making knives up in the Northwest here. We had two knife makers up in Montana, LBL and Jolly, but they were making hunting knives and then kind of making some knives on the side for leather work or saddle makers, and they had a great reputation. Their knives worked. They were the right grind. They had good steel, but like they had stopped making those knives in the 80s, and I don't know if it was just that they had passed or quit or whatever, but they weren't available to get new. And so, you were constantly looking for those knives, but nobody would part with them, because you couldn't get another one. Bob Douglas was about the only one to get, a refurbished knife, an old Gomf, a Rose, an Osborne. But, you were pretty limited to like a round knife, and, you could find maybe some head knives, but like a lot of the different, especially the French head was like a holy grail, and I talked to Bob and I'm just like, I just want a French head, and I don't care if it's Osborne or Gompf. And he's like, well, Scott, you know, like I think I've only come across a few in my many years, you know, and like if I do find one, he's like, yeah, it's going to be $700-800 if it's in good shape, you know. And so it was a real frustration to not just be able to, you know, you could get all the other tools, you know, Barry was making good tools, Bob was making, you know, good tools, but the knife was extremely hard, you know, and it was frustrating. And so I was working for Keith, and I didn't go to the leather show that year, and he came back and he said he ordered a couple of knives, and he said they were extremely sharp, extremely well made, you know, and I was kind of like, I hadn't seen anything like that, and I kind of, you know, I don't want to say I didn't trust him, but I was like, I was like skeptical.
Yeah, you
was
had your
skeptical.
hesitations.
Yeah, you know, and so anyhow, it, you know, Terry turned the knives around. You know, it was when he was first starting out, you know, fairly quickly, and so Keith got him and was like, you know, let me try him, and I was just like, oh my God, you know, this is great, you know, and so Keith had Terry make him like the first French, and then a Philadelphia, and they were both, you know, modeled off of the old tools, and then I wanted a French, but I got a little bit bigger one, and those were like the two Frenches that Terry had ever made, and so I was working for Keith, and then also I had my own business, and I was making really high quality archery gear and hunting gear. And so Terry was still making hunting knives at that time. And so I'd buy hunting knives from him and build a sheath and then sell that product as a whole. And so Terry and I just, you know, became friends. And then I introduced him to like Bob Douglas and stuff. And so like, you know, then Bob was like I just remember introducing Terry to Bob and Bob going, like, once he tried the knife, he's like, we've been waiting for this for 100 years, you know?
Yeah.
And then Terry gave Bob that knife, and Bob was just like awestruck, you know, like you know, like it was really cool to see, you know? So I'd always told Terry, I'm like, you know, I'd really like to learn how to make knives, you know, and, you know, carry this on. You know, but I was just not in a position, and he didn't really want to train anybody. You know, he was experiencing success, you know, and was kind of, you know, protective of it.
Yes.
And so then you know, and I just always knew that, like, you know, tools are important, and, you know, and if you can get in on that and provide a good quality tool, you know, you're going to have a great business, you know? And so, you know, Terry, you know, at the end was, you know, he was struggling with whether he wanted to continue because he just couldn't keep up with the demand and stuff. And so we came to a point where, you know, he says, I'm ready to teach you, you know? And so it went from there, and I spent, went 2 separate times, and you know, first time was to like learn what equipment I wanted to buy, you know, use some of his stuff so that I knew what I wanted, and then I just I came back and started ordering all my stuff and getting a little shop set up. So,
and what kind of steel? Because I know that's what some people always ask is like, let's talk about the steel of the knife.
Yeah. So the steel that I'm using, and it's the same steel Terry used, and it's 154 cm, and it's a more modern steel. It's you can get it. There's CPM, which would be powdered, and they use that in a lot of like your higher end fixed blades and stuff like that, because you can't see any imperfections in it. But it's really not necessary in making, you know, the tools type deals. So, you know, it's a little bit less money, same makeup and everything. But it's a high carbon stainless steel. So stainless has been typically like, people think of them as cheap knives, you know, because they're usually super hard to like they're just, it wasn't good steel. They just didn't cut well. But by adding the carbon, it's like they call them like, almost like a super steel,
Yeah.
And so so that's what I use. D2 has been used in some leather tools, but I using Terry's knives and seeing the longevity that I got out of the edge geometry before having a sharpening it, like I didn't want to change anything up like that.
So all your knives are made with this steel.
154 cm. Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And how does that material affect when you sharpen it? Is it easy to sharpen, or do you have to put some elbow grease into it?
So, I mean, with any of the steels, when when you're hardening them, when you're getting them heat treated or whatever. So, on the Rockwell scale, mine are at 61. Like, so if you wanted a little softer, say 57, 58, here's what you're going to have. Neither one is bad. It's what do you want out of your knife?
Gotcha.
And so if I heat treated to a Rockwell of 58, the knife will be easier to sharpen, but it's going to lose its edge geometry quicker. If you say had an accident or abused it accidentally, whatever, it'll roll. The steel will roll, where at a 61 Rockwell hardness, you're going to chip it. Either way, it's a fix. You have to fix it.
Yeah.
And so I like the fact that at 61 Rockwell, the edge geometry with stropping lasts a long time. So you're really just maintaining your edge. And then like Chaz Weldon, he gets like a year and a half out of his knife before he sends it back to me to be overhauled and sharpened. And he's just stropping, and he's using, Chaz builds a saddle a month. So, I mean, so somebody that maybe is a part-timer or whatever, they may never have to really sharpen their knife. If they take care of it, they just strop it.
Yeah. Hey, y'all, I want to talk to you about the very first sponsor for the Leathercraft Community Podcast Show, and it is Leather Machine Company. If you are looking to upgrade your workshop or to speed up the process on making items, then look no further than Leather Machine Co. They have various sewing machines of multi-purpose needs, along with leather cutting and splitting machines. Check out their website or give them a call for more information. Now, let's go back to the show. I was going to ask you, what are some good maintenance tips for your knives? And like, what kind of rouge do you recommend for stropping?
So for my everyday stropping, I mean, if I'm like cutting out parts or whatever, I'll take my strop and my knife, put it right on the bench. I try to keep people away from buffers, because the buffer is just moving extremely fast. And even if you know what you're doing, in my opinion, you're just removing way too much steel unnecessarily.
Yeah.
And so green rouge on a good strop, like a horse butt, and Steve Yezik is making some real nice strops for me. It just, when you feel your knife slipping, or any tool, an edger or whatever, as soon as you feel it slipping, that's the time to go and strop it and bring back the edge before it's like so bad that you have to do all this work to get it back.
Yeah. And now let's talk handles, because this is one of my favorite things. What wood is on your handles? So
I get all my wood from a company back east, and it's laminated birch, and it's the only way I can make these knives in the quantity that I do and maintain a constant look that is similar. The laminated birch doesn't shrink, doesn't expand. It's a real stable material. Like, actually, the color that I use is the same wood that Buck Knives use on their knives, and so it's to make the volume of knives that I do. It's really the only way that I can keep up and keep consistency in the product. And the handles are, I mean, the precision part is, grinding the blade, but the handle, when you put the handle on, that is where, you kind of get to use your artistic ability in shaping it and stuff. And that's where the knife, to me, comes alive and is finished.
Do you mind showing us how a handle is put together and attached to?
No. In fact, I know you really like a certain kind of wood, and I have some on hand. So let's go put a handle on your new knife.
Let's do it.
All right,
cool. Hey everyone, our second sponsor for the Leathercraft Community Podcast Show is none other than the Leather Crafters Journal. Carrying on a tradition of 68 years of publishing the magazine for leather workers and artists worldwide, they also host 3 trade shows in the United States and 1 in Europe. Give them a call or visit their website and use the promo code COMMUNITY, and you will receive an additional free magazine added to your subscription at no charge. The Leather Crafters Journal truly sets the standard with staying up to date on all things leathercraft. If it's about leather, it's in the journal. Now, back to our show. Hey everyone, our newest sponsor for the Leathercraft Community Podcast Show is Milwaukee Steel Rule Dies. They specialize in manufacturing your leather designs into dies for your clicker machine. They have state-of-the-art equipment that will help you level up your Leathercraft products and production with clean-cut leather every single time. Family operated and owned, proudly made in Wisconsin. Contact Milwaukee Steel Rule Dies for all of your leather dye solutions. All right, Scott, so let's talk about handle ergonomics. This is a very fascinating thing because I feel like some people get like sore forearms when they're using a knife too much. Is there like an important factor you consider when you are shaping your handles?
Yeah, first of all, and this goes for hunting knives and, most any knife, like a lot of times you'll see with, inexperienced knife makers, like I said, this is not just for leather knives. This is a tool that you're using in your hand. And some, whether it's a hunting knife or whatever, you might be using it for a length of time and you putting some power into it. And so if you see where like, the handles look kind of squared, that they don't have them, and that's usually more inexperienced knife makers, they're just afraid to shape, and take away material. And so they're kind of squared off. Well, anytime you have any type of a squared off handle like that, it's going to create hot spots, especially when you're using it a lot and putting power into it. With most traditional type head and round knives, they're not just held one way. We're constantly doing different things with them. And so if the handle is made to hold it in a specific way, it kind of limits you from using it skiving to, tilting the knife back or whatever. Or if, like a French head, you flip it around, you're using both tips. And so you really want to have something that no matter which way you hold it, it's not going to make a hot spot and it's going to be comfortable. So, here's, this is just a knife that I have laying here that it wasn't good enough to sell. And so, but the handle is fine, but you got a, nice round, smooth back end, and how you hold a knife. Some people like a shorter handle because they like to get the butt right into the palm of their hand.
Yep.
And bone on bone going up in the shoulder because you're keeping it, close to your body and you're pushing. Longer handle, I typically will pinch more, and hold it in a grip like that. Everybody's kind of I make some shorter handles because the people want to get it, into the palm of their hand. The longer one seems to be more, what everybody gets because, then, if you're turning it and you're skiving, the longer you have the distance, the flatter you can lay it down on your leather and skive. So I sell less short handles than I do long ones. But, I try to tell people, get used to using different things, and don't just be set, I have to hold it like this. I mean, I grab a knife and depending what I'm going to do with it, I hold it many different ways. And with a rounded off all the way around handle that's not made to, my thumb goes here and this, whatever, it's going to be more useful. This is a dynamic tool. You don't run it with just the tip. It's constantly moving up and down. It's, we cut curves, we cut straight lines, we skive. It's never, you just hold it in this one position.
Actually, Scott, I built my first saddle with your standard 4-inch head knife. I bought it from you a couple of years ago, and I finally built that saddle back in September of 2024. And that one knife just did everything for me. And it was like, whew.
Yeah, the small standard head knife is, it's a great knife. It's sturdy tips, skives well. You can't go wrong with that knife, and it's a favorite.
Yeah. And then I have a trim knife too, which is like, now I kind of keep it handy because I'll just grab it and I'll just trim random little bits and pieces, and that trim knife is
yeah,
it's good.
Well, if you like, I don't know. I haven't met anybody that does leather that doesn't want to have, doesn't have a multitude of tools on their bench.
Yeah, absolutely,
So.
absolutely. Like, I feel like there's hammer people and there's knife people, because or sometimes there's two. Like, I've been doing the podcast now for a bit, and I've been to a lot of people's shops. Everyone has like 3 or 4 or 5 knives. It's unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
All different makers, and it's great because everyone gets to try something different,
Right.
you know. And so it's and I always see a Scott Teaschner or a nip shield knife there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's pretty cool. So let's talk about how big your catalog is and what knives do you offer to the public.
So, well, I just counted them because you asked, and I'm like, I thought I only had about 12, but there's 19 different models.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I usually can't, when I go to a show, I don't have all of those available because it's hard for me being a one-man shop to get all those. So I usually just bring what I know really sells. So, but between the trim knives, the head knives, and the round knives, there's 19 models.
Can you go over some of the similar variances or differences that you have in amongst your catalog?
Yeah, so with the round knife, I mean, there's only 2. There's a big round knife and there's a smaller round knife. The rest that are thrown into the category of a head knife, we got a Klenda, we got a Philadelphia pattern, French head, Chandgear, Douglas, the list goes on and on, for the names, but they're all in the head knife category.
Mm-hmm.
And then within the trim knives, we've got, the Warncliffe, the bevel point, hook, the little trim hook curve detail knife, and then I got a couple other ones that I haven't offered yet that are going to be new, and then we got the draw gauge blades, and the Shark, the high end utility knife.
Now, do you do any custom knife making?
I decided right from the very beginning when I got into this business, because I did leather work and was into the custom end of that, and seeing, some of the problems that could arise from giving, people the freedom of designing or asking for what they wanted. And I felt within my business, the main goal was to provide the best tool I could to the craftsman, and customization was not that important as far as what I wanted in my business. So I can alter some things, if somebody wants a short handle like that, that's no problem. But as far as like, if they got an idea for a design of a knife, I'd have to want it in my catalog. I'm not going to do a one of. I'm not going to look for exotic woods or stuff like that. It would just take too much time to do that.
What is your turnaround time if someone was to order from you?
Yeah, so typically, and I've been pretty quick, and so 2 to 6 weeks, just depending on where I'm at with orders.
Yeah. And how can people order knives from you?
Well, I don't have a website, so get it from there. So typically, most of my customers contact me through Facebook or Instagram, or find my phone number on, I think, my Facebook page. So many people are word of mouth. It actually just amazes me that I don't have a website, and I just use those 2 social media pages. And I don't even use them to my full benefit.
But you have a website coming though, I know.
Yeah, I've had one coming for the last 3 years, so I just need to get them the stuff to finish it.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
But
and then now let's talk warranty on your knives. Like, do you offer sharpening? What do you offer?
Yeah, so the first thing is, I realize, I sell a lot of knives to people that may be just starting out, and they may screw it up, and they just spent $300 on a knife, and they did something, dropped it, whatever, and they're they're upset, because they just spent a lot of money, on a knife, and they think, oh my God, it's ruined, But I usually just, if it's something like that, I just take care of it, and I either, swap them out or I fix it. Like Barry King, he sells my knives, and so, he sold some knives, and they've gotten damaged right there at the show. They go, guy buys it, goes in a class, and accidentally does something, and he just gives them a new one, and then we fix it. So nobody has to worry about anything like that. And then as far as when you use it and it's ready to be resharpened, I do offer that service, and and it comes back like brand new. I'll sharpen Terry Nipshield's knives. I'll sharpen Gomps, Roses, Osborne's. I'm not going to sharpen my competitors' knives that are making knives right now, but anybody that's out of business and and has a high quality knife that's worth sharpening, I will sharpen it.
Perfect. And then I want to go back to how people can contact you. You said Facebook and Instagram, correct?
That's mostly where I get most of my people contact
now,
me.
Is that under just your name, Scott
Teaschner? I do have a business page. It's under my old leather business, Wyoming Leather Works, but Scott Teaschner on both Instagram and Facebook is what I and then phone number. I can give that out right now if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
307-587-9979 is my cell phone number. You can text or call. Doesn't matter. Seems like people these days like to text instead of call.
Yeah.
So, but
well, Scott,
can I say one more thing? I guess I just want to thank like some people that were like really influential and being successful, and one is Barry King. He I've been good friends with him for a long time, and he makes outstanding tools, and so when I wanted to go on this venture, I talked to him before I got into it, and he has just such a huge amount of insight, because he's been for generations in leather, with his family and then his tools. And so, and he told me, he's like, well, as long as your knives are as good as Terry's, and he said it with a smile, I'd be willing to help you out, so I can't get to all these shows, so he always has a really good supply of my knives, and they're at, his show. And so, he's, huge thanks to him. And then, back to Terry is, these knives were, really important to Terry. And, I can't thank him enough for finally, deciding to, take me under his wing and help me out, because I wouldn't be here, without him. So
yeah. You have an amazing story, Scott. It's very interesting how out of necessity came this desire to make a product, and over the years, boom.
Yeah.
And now you have this world-class sharp knife business, and it's, I can't tell you how much I enjoy using it. And so it's a good product you have going here.
Thank you. It's important to me to, like I said, starting out, I knew how hard it was. It was the hardest tool to get a hold of. And so I want to carry that on, that, these tools that Terry made, they're made to the same standard, and people are getting what they need to do their job, because it's the start of the project. It's the start of it. So, yeah.
And I realized after making my first saddle just how important it is to strop and to keep that knife sharp, because there's been a couple times where I was cutting and I was like, oh, this is not cutting the way it was.
Right.
And then I stropped it, and boom, it was so perfect.
Yeah.
I was just like, why did it not strop? I need to maintain and get better at stropping sooner.
And we're going to try to, I'm trying to offer a line of product, for maintaining knives and more information. I've done some videos, and hopefully you and I are going to do some, better videos on, not only maintaining, my knives, but, all the different tools, because that has been another thing that, has been, hard to get that kind of information, and people are always, a little bit scared of ruining something, and so you maybe like lay off, and then you just keep degrading your edge to the point where like it's not even a useful tool anymore.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Scott, I can't thank you enough for your time and for showing us how you shaped and attached a handle and talking about your lovely product line here.
all right, thank you.
So, all right, you guys, thank you for watching another wonderful episode of the Leathercraft Community Podcast Show. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.